Hey guys, happy Friday. It's Peg at the History Shelf. I'm here tonight to do a tag. I have been tagged by Joey at Game of Authors to do the 2 books, 1 stone tag, which was originally done by Shawn, the book Maniac. I will link both of these gentlemen below in my description. I want to thank Joey for tagging me. Thanks, Joey. So let's just jump right in. First question is the second last book you read. So I went back in my my files, and the second to last book that I finished reading was actually my commentary, The Message of Acts by John R.W. Stott. So I basically have been reading this slowly over the past year. I tend to read these slowly. It's not something you just breeze through. So basically went through the whole book of Acts and got John Stott's take on the different passages. This is heavily underlined and written in. I'm currently trying to decide which other commentary in the this is the Bible Speaks Today series. I own all of them. I collected them over the years by IVP Press. That's InterVarsity Press. It's a great press. It publishes a lot of Christian literature. I love their academic books. So yeah, this is the Message of Acts. It's interesting. The New Testament ones are always in this brown type of color, two-tone brown, and the Old Testament ones are like in a two-tone green. So you can always tell which ones are which. But this was really edifying. I really enjoyed it. Again, a lot of things underlined in here. A lot of things written in. So yeah, this was my second to last book. Let's see here. Next question. The second book from the top of your TBR pile. So I keep a little TBR pile right next to my keyboard to my right hand side. So the second book from the top is actually this one, which I think I've referenced in my nonfiction November TBR. So this is Labyrinth of Ice, The Triumph and Tragic Greeley Polar Expedition. This is by Buddy Levy. This is actually an advanced reader's edition, and this comes out December 3rd. So I'm trying to time this to start reading it, the week of Thanksgiving. I'm trying to finish up a couple more. I'm reading a book on the Puritans, which is pretty dense. It's a lot of information, but yeah, so this is coming up very quickly. And then we have question 3, your two-star reads. So I had to go back into my Goodreads and look back at the past year and see which books I rated 2 stars. Now, mind you, I haven't always had Goodreads, so really my list only goes back so far, because before Goodreads I had Shelfari. I don't know if some of you remember Shelfari. I really liked Shelfari. I love that it was tied into Amazon, but and I made the export over, but I don't know if it worked all the way, and I think I lost some of the ratings. But from recent memory, the 2 books that I had 2 stars on were, and I know this might shock a lot of you, maybe a lot of you like this book. Now, I had no problem with the content of the book. It was just the writing. I'm sorry. He's a wonderful man, Bob Woodward. He really is. I got this as soon as it came out. This is Fear Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward. So maybe I picked it up just for the more, scandalous details, but as soon as the book came out, everyone in the media had already mined out what was the most interesting tidbit. So by the time I read this book, it just seemed so, and I know he's a journalist, and I know it was probably written this way, but it was so flat. The writing was just so flat, and we just went from it seemed like there was no narrative arc. It was just a rehashing of details. This person in this meeting heard this. They went to here. They did that. And I was just like, oh my God, is there anything going to tie this together in a more, have an overarching purpose? But he was just detailing what was going on in the White House, I guess. But it was missing was missing something for me. It was very flat reading, so I gave it 2 stars. Sorry, Bob. I loved All the President's Men. I mean, come on, that was great. Okay, so the next, I don't have the copy here because I either recycled the book because it was that bad, or I gave it away at work in the giveaway bin and no one ever picked it up. And this will be shocking to Steve Donahue, and I'm really, really sorry to upset you, Steve, but the other book I had 2-star rating on was Meg by Steve Alton. Yes, it's about the killer megalodon shark. I love a good shark story, just like the next person. I mean, Jaws traumatized me when I was a kid. I think I was 6 years old when Jaws, the movie, came out. And I've always been just morbidly fascinated by sharks. I've had horrific nightmares of sharks, but I can't seem to stop watching those movies or reading those books. But Meg was just it was not good. So sorry, Steve. 2 stars. Okay, 2 great, and this is question number 4. 2 great books by the same author. Okay, I have them right here. Hang on a second. I think I showed these recently on a shelf tour or something. I don't remember. This is Simon Sebag Montefiore. He's one of my favorite historians, especially of Russian history. We'll start with his first. This is Young Stalin. Just a great study of, as it says, the young years of Stalin. There's just so much detail in this book. Loved it. His writing is just so effortless. It just flows like running water. I just love it. Yeah, it's just a great book. So, Young Stalin, and then by far his most classic, I think, so far is Stalin, The Court of the Red Tsar. Highly recommend this to everybody. You should really read, if you really want to get into understanding the beginnings of the Soviet Union and why it just became such a cult of personality around Stalin. You really do need to read this book. It's fabulous. So yes, 2 books by Simon Sebag Montefiore I highly recommend. Okay, let me see, next question. Oh, question 5. I don't have an answer written down just yet, but it's 2 bails or 2 books you wish you'd bailed on, or 2 books you hated. I would maybe say Fear would be that. And maybe I was just turned off because it's the subject matter. I mean, I don't know. The other one could be very controversial. I'm not going to say I rated it. I rated it highly for the sheer aspect of its research, the mellifluousness of the writing, but I struggled with the subject matter, and that is the recent biography by the late great Edmund Morris on Thomas Edison. So the book is Edison. I don't have it here with me, but if you are scientifically minded, you would probably love this book. But it was so heavy on his inventions, and he would go into so much detail about the experiments, and it was just pages and pages of scientific, chemistry, oh god, physics. I mean, and I was never good at this in school, and I never had an interest in it. So I would be reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to get through this stuff. I don't understand it. I just kind of want to learn more about him as a man and his relations with other people, his family. And there were those moments, but they were so fleeting. So I had to really power my way through it, and I did review it for a journal online, the Book Browse Review. So I mean, I rated it highly as far as how other people might enjoy it, and not to be so subjective about it. But it was a tough read for me, and I really did not I did not enjoy it, unfortunately. I'd be better served going to Edmund Morris's trilogy on Theodore Roosevelt, I think. But so it was probably just the subject matter, but it was well written. Okay, so that's, yeah, so those are two books. I guess I could say that I've two books I didn't really care for or wish I bailed on. So, I didn't get the book out for these two. Darn it. Okay, so shoot. Two favorite reads so far this year. Hang on, I'm going to grab one of them at least. Okay, so we have Midnight in Chernobyl. I mentioned this several times, by Adam Higginbotham. In fact, they're having a Goodreads best books of 2019 voting going on right now, and I've already voted for this for nonfiction or history. I love this book. I will probably reread this book. This is the untold story of the world's greatest nuclear disaster. It's harrowing, it's riveting, it's page turning. I couldn't put it down. It made me buy a bunch of other books. On this, I wanted to know everything I could after reading this book, and while I was reading this book. I bought a book by Piers Paul Reed called Ablaze, I think. Yeah, I have it over there. And that's more of the personal stories of these men who were called in to do the cleanup, the firemen who initially responded. So it's just wonderful stuff. I bought a book, and I haven't read it yet. It's called Voices from Chernobyl. Basically the same type of approach where they're interviewing the people that somehow survived, and so it's just a fascinating event. This definitely was one of my favorite reads so far this year. The other book I read that I enjoyed was a book by Jean Dadel, and I'm typing this in right now because I forgot to bring the book from down upstairs, and it makes me mad that I didn't. But it was about the crops in, here we go, Cotton and Race in the Making of America, the Human Costs of Economic Power. This book was amazing. It opened up my mind. I love books that teach me something I never really knew before, and then just opened me up to wanting to learn about another hidden recess, deeper within the cavern of history, of the Civil War, of slavery. This took definitely more, it took an economic look at the price of the human cost, as it says in the subtitle, of slavery, with the cotton crop. And cotton was a real, excuse my language, a real bitch. Because if it hadn't become such a hot commodity, his argument in the book is that slavery was not turning a profit with just sugar and tobacco by the late 18th century, early 19th century, mid 19th century. But the hunger and craze for cotton and how well it grew in the South, it just reinvigorated slavery, as far as people started moving slaves to the Mississippi and the bigger cotton producing states, and they wanted to the Confederacy, well, not before, it wasn't the Confederacy yet, but the slave plantation owners were looking to try to reinstate the slave trade. So I mean, cotton was a real bastard. But gosh, yeah, so Cotton and Race in the Making of America, The Human Cost of Economic Power by Jean, Gene, Dadel. That's Dattel. I will probably I'll show the book in a year-end wrap-up as one of my favorite books of 2019, so you will see the cover, but if you're interested, that would be my other two favorite reads so far this year. Midnight in Chernobyl, and then Cotton and Race in the Making of America. All right, question 7. 2 new favorite booktubers. Well, that would be pretty easy right now because I was just tagged by one of them. That is Joey at Game of Authors. I'm really enjoying his content that he's putting out, and I think we have a lot of similar reading interests, so I'm looking forward to more of Joey's videos. And then through Joey, I just discovered um, Faith, Faith and Books. That's Faith, and her name is Faith, obviously, but Faith and Books. And I will link all of these fine people below. So those are my two new favorite booktubers, but I'm discovering new ones all the time. So I wish I could name all of you. You're beautiful people. Okay, question 8: a book you've read twice. So I don't have a physical copy here to hold up to you, but I am or I was. I just haven't read many of her books recently. I was a big Joyce Carol Oates fan, and up to about 8 years ago, maybe. And then I really just moved into nonfiction and history big time. But one of my most favorite book by her is Foxfire. Foxfire, Confessions of a Girl Gang. Wow, that book. I remember when I read that book, I was like, I want to make the movie of this book. And then I was on this quest. I was going to make the movie of this book about these girls in 1950s America that, they're kind of on the outside of society and for one reason or another outcasts, but they all come together and form this little gang, and things get out of hand. Well, then here they come along in the early 90s or whatever and make some updated version where it's the 90s and it's what's her face, Angelina Jolie is playing the lead, and I was like, oh, you ruined it. It's a fabulous book. It's very empowering, I think, for girls and women. It's I don't know. It was a very empowering read, and I did read it twice. The main character, or the protagonist, is Legs Sadowski. That's her name, Legs Sadowski, and just dreamed of being her. That was cool. Oh boy. Okay, so question number 9: 2 fabulous quotes from books you read recently. Okay, well, I don't know about if they're fabulous, but they kind of stood out to me in a way. One came from this book, which was from my Victober read, which I still have not finished because it is so difficult. I'm not going to lie. This is a difficult book. This is Thomas Carlyle, Sartor Resartus. This quote will at least give you an example of the difficulty of the reading, but I mean, and this is one of the more easier passages. Okay, here we go. Okay. Strange enough how creatures of the humankind shut their eyes to plainest facts, and by the mere inertia of oblivion and stupidity live at ease in the midst of wonders and terrors. But indeed man is, and was always, a blockhead and dullard, much readier to feel and digest than to think and consider. Prejudice, which he pretends to hate, is his absolute lawgiver. Mere use and wont everywhere leads him by the nose. Thus let but a rising of the sun, let but a creation of the world happen twice, and it ceases to be marvelous, to be noteworthy, or noticeable. Perhaps not once in a lifetime does it occur to your ordinary biped of any country or generation, be he gold-mantled prince or russet-jerkined peasant, that his vestments and his self are not one and indivisible, that he is naked, without vestments, till he buy or steal such, and by forethought sew and button them. Okay, so a little taste of Sartor Resartus, otherwise known as the Tailor Retailored. I'm still working on it. In fact, look at, what is this? This is the title of chapter 9. What the hell is that? What is it? Adamantism. Adamantism. Don't know. But hey, my vocabulary is growing. Thank you, Thomas. And then this is a fun little volume. I used this for some research for my thesis back in August for the paper I wrote to graduate. with my undergraduate in history. This is a great book, God in General. Oh, God in General Longstreet, The Lost Cause in the Southern Mind. This book was helpful for me in showing that people were very misplaced and heaping all this praise on Robert E. Lee as far as being a general and making him into the saint after the war, and oh, he was such a Christian gentleman. And ever since I was a young girl and reading Civil War stuff, but of course I'm a Yankee and I was always like very Union, just the blue and the gray. It was always the blue. So I was always like, why were people, vaunting his reputation? And he was a traitor, straight up. I don't understand why there were all these monuments and books written about him as if he were, Jesus Christ. And it's just like, it's blasphemy, first of all. Anyway, so this little quote here I thought was and I tagged it here. Let's see here. We're going to start with, okay. Somewhere in these generations of image building, the South lost touch with Robert E. Lee. Even if Southerners doubted the abstraction of the national symbolism, they accepted it, or at least allowed it to cloud their vision of Lee as a regional entity. Gone was the Lee who once owned slaves, who even in 1861 spoke of a, quote, cruel North that possessed, quote, evil designs. Absent from the predominant imagery was the hot-tempered general who once ordered the execution of a forager who had stolen a pig, who lapsed into what one of his staff members described as his, quote, savage moods, and who in the years after Appomattox spoke angrily of the, quote, vindictiveness and malignity of the Yankees. Word. This is true. I mean, these are all things that have been documented, but, the hagiographers of Lee, they will never talk about that. But Lee wasn't all that, man. He was, we've proved some of those stories wrong, like he apparently after the war, I think this might have been in Ken Burns' Civil War series, that he approached the altar to receive communion next to a black man. That was proven to be apocryphal. That never happened, and he wouldn't have done it. So, no. You can see how I feel about Robert E. Lee, right? So those are two quotes, and then we'll end with question 10. Tag a number of booktubers. The total must be divisible by 2. Okay, so, gosh, there's so many of you out there I love, and I'm going to put a bunch of links below for all you guys, but of course I'm going to call out Jason Harrigan at Byways and Bookland. I'm going to call out Steve Donahue. I'm going to call out Richardson Reads, Mark Richardson, Sharon Goforth, Grim Reads, Kathy at Grim Reads. Of course, we have these two new booktubers I'm really enjoying, Faith at Faith and Books, and Joey at Game of Authors. We have Brian at Book Wanting. There's more, but I will put them in the description below. But anyway, so that was my 2 books, 1 stone tag. Thanks for hanging out. I know it was a longer tag, but I had a lot to say, a lot to answer to. And 4. So anyway, you guys have a great night. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.